This conference will now be recorded.
Is after I committed my templates into the repository, I created a copy pipeline. I wouldn't say a build pipeline because I'm not building anything. I'm doing a copy pipeline which simply copies all the ARM templates from the source to the destination, and I've added this pipeline as an artifact on the release pipeline again. So this is now sitting as the artifact on the release pipeline here as such. Yes, any questions or any confusion still here? Anyone,
Hi,
any
sir.
questions? Good, good, please.
So for this also, we have to add some build validation pipeline, sir. To Sonar Cloud.
Sonar Cloud, no, because see, Sonar is normally for pure programming languages like .NET, Java, and all these things out. So you don't really have to add it to your, let's say, the JSON file. In the JSON file, you can have a validation pipeline wherein you can have, let's say, a simple PowerShell script, which is checking the syntax and which is telling you that everything is good and all that stuff. So that kind of a validation is good enough. But Sonar doesn't have a role to play here.
Can you share out to the process script for validation, sir?
Sure, definitely. I'll also share the process for validation, but I will share that, but not in this particular class. Give me like one class more. I'll go ahead and let's say show you how to add the validation for your ARM templates and all these things. Because it will become a little confusing if I do that right now, because I'll have to introduce a PowerShell script out here. So it will become a little confusing if I introduce it at this point. Yes. Any more questions here, guys?
Hi sir, how to build,
Good, please.
how
Mhm.
to make slots, sir? Deployment slots.
How to make a deployment slot. When you say how to make a deployment slot, are you asking how to make a deployment slot using the ARM template, or what exactly is your question? If I kind of
Yeah, yeah,
get it right.
yeah.
So
ARM
in
template.
the ARM template, if you want a slot, right? So let's go there and let's put this in. So this is a web app name out here, and if I want to a slot, I need to come here and say ARM hyphen web, and there's something called app deploy. Let's see if there's something called slots. Let's see slot. Okay. I don't have a definition for the slot here. Let's see. Let's check the documentation real quick and say ARM template web app slots. So if you look at the documentation out here, and if you look at the template definition, let's scroll down. Okay, where is the ARM template? It's showing the bicep out here. Okay. ARM template references. And if I just scroll down, I have my web, and inside that I have the slots. So let's see the slot application. So farm sites, and inside that, let's see slots. And here, if I go to the ARM template, this is the definition to create a slot. And if I just scroll down, I have the template examples that will help you, let's say, to go ahead and create a slot out here. So let's scroll down all the way to the bottom. All right, so something, okay. Web app with a custom deployment slot. Just go here and check the template out. Here it's telling you the same template and all these things. So this is the sites, and here it's telling you what is the slot name, and here you can tell what is the kind of a slot, what is the name of the slot, and all these things. And you can go ahead and create multiple slots out here for, let's say, for your convention, and you can also go ahead and deploy it on the slots. So this is a template definition, and I just went into the documentation to explore this out. You can look at this particular template to check how to create a slot out here as such using the template out here. Does it answer your question?
Yes, sir.
All right, any more questions here, guys? So I've added this to my release pipeline. What I'm going to do right now is that let's go into the steps. So I have something called Azure App Service Deploy, and then I have a SQL task out here. I'll add one more task, and I'll just type in something called ARM. Here I have something called ARM template deployment. I'll say add, and this is going to be my first task. And I'll say display name here is create infrastructure. I'll say create infrastructure. This is something that I'm just, let's say, putting here. And let's scroll down. It's asking, okay, fine, where do you want to deploy it? I'm saying it's a resource group. I'll say the connection here is Devops ATM that we created yesterday. Subscription here is Visual Studio Enterprise subscription. Now it's telling, okay, fine, what is the name of the resource group? Again, I want to create a resource group called dev-rg. I don't have the resource group. What I'll do is I'll go into my variable section. I'll say add, and I also already have the password and the username. I'm going to reuse the same thing out here. I'll put in one more variable called rg name, and I'll say this is dev-rg. This is something that I'm going to put. Just come back to my pipeline, just go to the tasks, and I'll say that this is dollar open close rg name. Now everything that I'm declaring is declared in the form of a parameter or declared in the form of a variable in Azure DevOps. I am not hard coding anything. The reason, I'll talk about that. Location is also a value that you can parameterize. So I'll say location, and when you're parameterizing, please make sure to pass the location without any space. Say East US 2. And very importantly, guys, I have observed this with a lot of free trial accounts, especially if you want to create a web app, let's say a SQL server and etc. In place of East US 2, place this in North Central US. It is North Central US. This is the location what works, especially when you're coming with a free trial. In East US2, you might not have the quota to create all these things out. So I'm telling location here in my case is East US2. In your case, place it in North Central US. I'll just scroll down. I'll say here it is dollar open close parenthesis. I'll say location. I'll just scroll down, and here it is telling where is your template. I'll say click on this one. I'll say, you know what? My template is coming from that infra copy pipeline. Go here and pick up something called web app sql.json. I'll say okay. Just scroll down, and my template as of now doesn't have anything declared. So I'll come here in the override template parameter section. I'll click on this one, and here I have all the parameters that are actually there in my template, which is SKU name, DB name, ASP name, web app name, SQL name, and all these things out. Everything is now a parameter. So what I'll do, I'll copy everything here, place it. I'll just copy here. And what I want to do is I want to declare all these values on my variable section. So here I'll now start declaring value like SQL server name. I'll say the SQL server name that I have is something like dev SQL server USE2000. I would say the SQL DB name, something like demo DB. I would say the app service name, ASP name, app service plan name. I'll say it is dev plan 01. And I will say the web app name. Okay, close this. I'll say web app name. I would say this is dev web app XYZ SQL 000 or USES2, something like this, so that the name is unique. And I, any which ways, have the username and password. So this is something that I don't have to declare. So I'll just copy all these parameters: username, RG name, location, SQL server name, SQL DB name, ASP name, something that I declared. I'll go back into my tasks, just scroll down, and under the override parameter section, I'll now start giving all these things out here in the form of a Azure DevOps variable. In order to do that, again, since we are declaring the names and etc., please open and close quotes, dollar, open close parenthesis, and in here I will talk about the SQL server name, whatever that I copied or whatever that I declared. Here again, let's say quotations, open close, let's say param of the dollar, open close parenthesis, and the DB name goes by something like SQL DB name, app service plan name. Let's put this in. Say this is ASP name, web app name. I'll say it is again something like web app name or something. That's something that I declared here on my parameter section. So I'll say web app name, and then I have the username and password. So I'll say this is dollar username. I'll say this is dollar password. Whatever that I declared on my variable, I'm calling them. And one final thing, the SKU name is something that I forgot to declare. So I'll come here, I'll say add, I'll say SKU name, and for now I'll put the SKU name in F1. Come here into my development. I will say here go, sorry, okay, go here. Okay, everything is lost. I'll put this once again. Say this is dollar open close SKU name out here. This as password. I'll put this as username. This is web app name. So this is ASP name. See, what was my database name? There's something that I'm not too. I don't remember this. Let's see. This is SQL DB name, and this is finally the SQL server name out here. Put this in quotes, and I'll say OK. So I'm passing all my parameters to the template in the form of an Azure DevOps variable. All these are Azure DevOps variables that I declared, and I'm passing them to my template in a structured format. I'm going ahead, telling what is my template, passing this out. Coming down, it's telling Azure App Service Deploy, Azure Resource Manager, and etc. It's telling the DevOps connection. Now the app service name is no longer this. I'll call my variable again, which is the something like the web app name out here. So I'm telling this is the name that is being created in the first step, and I'm utilizing the same variable in the second step out here. And if you have a slot, you can say deploy to a slot and say what is the resource group and etc. And you can say what is the slot out here. That's an optional parameter. So for now, I'm directly deploying it onto the web app. I'll just scroll down. All this is good. I'll come here. In here, now let's see. The SQL server name is not this. I'll remove this out. And let's say Control V. And I'll say it's SQL server name. So it's SQL server name.database.windows.net. Database name out here is not this one. It's bracket open close. And it's a SQL DB name out here. So I now have all these things, and everything is now coming as a parameter. Now I'll save this out. I'll say added ARM templates. I'll say OK. I'll now go ahead create a release. This is infrastructure as a code, wherein I am not going to the Azure portal. I'm not even creating my resource group. If you observe, I'm not even, let's say, creating my resource group out here. I'm just going ahead creating everything via a template and that particular template is coming from a release pipeline in Azure DevOps. So if you are a DevOps engineer, you go and make some change onto your template. That template will, or that change will go ahead trigger something called as a build pipeline, give you the artifact, trigger a release pipeline, and go ahead and create the infrastructure out here. So now if you see, the create infrastructure step, which is using the ARM template, is telling firstly, I'm trying to create the resource group. It's telling the resource group is not existing. I'll create one. It's validating your template, telling that is the template valid. It's telling okay, fine, template is valid. Now it's going in and starting the deployment. So if you come here, refresh the screen, I now have a dev-rg that is created. And if you go inside the RG, go into the deployment section, I have now a deployment coming from Azure DevOps, which is going ahead trying to create a SQL server with this particular name. And all these things are coming from a pipeline. And if you see, it's also able to resolve your parameters. It's saying, okay, fine, this is the web app name that you want to create. This is a SQL server you want to create, and etc. So it's creating the complete infrastructure for you, laying down the infrastructure. This is going to take about 5 or 6 minutes of time. Once the infrastructure is done, you'll simply go ahead, do what you were doing earlier. But today, it's additionally creating the infrastructure and then going ahead, deploying the code on the infrastructure and injecting, let's say, that particular commands into the database as well out there as such. This is what is the end-to-end flow, what we are following right now. And this is the same thing what I want, let's say, in QA, in stage, in, let's say, production and all these things. So I will replicate the same task, let's say, in or I will replicate the same task across various environments as such out there. Yes, any questions here? Anyone? Any questions still here? Again, this is going to take some time. If you see this, it's now laying down all your infrastructure. It's created the server, it's created the database and etc. And everything is being passed as an Azure DevOps variable. I am not approaching anything at all. I'm not hard coding anything. The reason being, tomorrow, when I go ahead and start replicating this particular stage and I want to create, let's say, the QA and let's say the production and etc., I would want a generic stage. This is a generic stage. I'm not hard coding anything out here. So it's easy for me to make a copy of my stage and create multiple stages from it. And also it's a game of variables. Variables are very, very, very important in Azure DevOps. We will talk about an entire section about variables and something called variable groups and all these things, which will talk about that. But any questions still here? Anyone, any questions still here that I can take? And now if you see the create infrastructure is done. So it's done creating the infrastructure. So if you go back, I have all these things created from my template over a pipeline. I'm not even using my local machine to create all these things out. Then you have the app service deployment, wherein it's now telling, okay, fine, I will release the code onto the app service. And then the SQL, let's say, task injection, which is an end-to-end procedure, and your infrastructure is ready after all. I mean, doing all these things, your infrastructure now becomes ready out here as such. Yes, any questions still here? Anyone, any questions still here that I can take?
Hi, sir.
Okay, please.
So in real time, we are not deploying on directly on production stage now, sir. Like we are deploying on deployment slots only now.
We are deploying on deployment slots, yes, provided if you only have one specific environment. But right now, what I'm doing right now is that the reason I'm not using a deployment slot is because I am first testing the same infrastructure on development. On a development, I can take a downtime, not a problem. I don't need a slot. On a QA, also, I can take a downtime, not a problem. No need a slot. I'm testing it in the QA, telling that the code is good, promoting it to stage. In the stage, also, I'm directly deploying on the web application, testing it again, and then moving into production. In production, you can, let's say, implement your slots. You don't have to, let's say, use a slot in your lower environments like development and everything.
Like it means in real time also there will be separate web apps for developer QA and production. So
I'm sorry. Yes, in real time, yes. In a real time, we would like to maintain multiple environments out here. 9 out of 10 times, you will have separate web app, you will have separate resource groups for developers, QAs, and let's say production out here. because you need to, let's say, establish such a kind of a segregation, test it out thoroughly, and then move your code into production. Yes, any
Okay.
questions still here? Good,
Sir,
second.
sir, after completion of deployment, we will get finally some artifacts, right?
After completion of deployment, no. After completion of build, yes, you will get the artifact. After completion of deployment, no. Deployment, you're just taking the artifact and deploying it. You're not, let's say, producing the artifact in your release pipeline. So the completion of deployment, if you want to test this out, just go to your resource group, click on your web application, just say browse, and you should see some output. That's the completion of a deployment out here. Completion of a build, yes, you're getting the artifact. Completion of a deployment, no, you won't get any artifact out here.
Sir, is there any possible to check the artifacts whether it is a right way or not? As a DevOps engineer, is that my role or
Mhm.
not?
No, it's not your role as a DevOps engineer. Again, the possibility to check whether the artifact is right or wrong is only after it gets deployed. That's the right way to test it out. Because once your artifact is on the cloud, once your artifact is on the infrastructure, that's where you can actually tell whether the artifact is right or wrong. If it is wrong, very simple, ask your, let's say, developer to revert your artifact, or let's say make a new code change, build it, and then redeploy it and test it out once again. So as a DevOps engineer, you are not, let's say, expected to have the knowledge of how the artifact is before the deployment is done.
Where did I check that one, sir? In generally, you're saying in deployment stage or build stage? You're saying
When you say check, what exactly do you want to check?
whether the developer is given a code to me. So I
Mhm.
deployed that one, build that one. So I got
Okay.
some artifacts. Again, I have to send
No,
to the
no,
developer.
just a second. That's what I'm telling you. Just a second. You are not getting the artifact after you're deploying it out. You are using a release pipeline to deploy the artifacts that are produced by a build pipeline. There are two things that you're, let's say, trying to, let's say, link things out here. Artifact is the end product of your build pipeline, not your release pipeline. This is your artifact. You're taking this artifact into a release pipeline, linking those artifacts here, and deploying it onto your cloud. So you're not getting the artifact after you're doing a release. You're simply deploying the artifact onto the, let's say, the web app, and it's the duty of the developer to now go and test this out, understand whether his changes are working fine or not. Getting the point?
Somewhere I'm not understanding, sir. Actually,
Yes, sir. Please look at, or please or please tell me what is your understanding about the artifacts. Then I'll be able to, let's say, tell you
sir.
where exactly you're missing.
Okay. So what I understood, sir. Actually, developer give
Mhm.
code to me as a DevOps engineer.
Correct. Okay. Where does he give
So
the code to you? Okay. How does he give the code to you?
through in the form of .NET or whatever it is
Correct. But where is the code?
in the repos area.
In the repos area. What are you doing with that particular code?
First, I will build that one.
Okay. When you build that one, what do you
I
get?
will do
Okay.
that.
Okay.
I will
Just a
do
second.
the
No, just a
pipeline.
second.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Right. You do a pipeline to build it out.
Okay.
What do you get at the end of a build pipeline?
After that, I will do the deployment.
Wait a second. Wait a second. After you build, what do you get? You're trying to build something, right?
Yes.
After you build it out, what are you
Uh,
getting? What are you getting after you build? Do you get my question?
yes. 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 Yes.
Right? What are you getting after you build? That's what we were doing in the diagram, right? Over a couple of classes also. So you get the artifact after you build. The artifact is nothing but code in a low level language. You're taking that artifact and deploying it using a release pipeline. This is your release pipeline. These are your artifacts. You're taking the artifact, deploying it, and this is your end product. So
Okay.
very importantly, there's a reason. Just draw a diagram of what you understand of what is the end output of something called as a build. Yes, after build, we get the artifacts exactly. We take the artifacts into a release pipeline and deploy it out. How do we use keywords for confidential items in a DevOps section? Again, I did not cover the section of keywords yet, which I will cover it out and also show you how to use something known as a keyword out here. Yes, any more questions? Yes, we use those artifacts in the release, and once the artifacts are deployed, this is how it will look like. This is the end product of your deployment strategy or your deployment pipeline as such. Yes, anyone, any more questions, guys?
Hi, sir.
Go, please.
So we can use PowerShell also, no? Also, sir, instead of the AR template.
You can use PowerShell also, but again, PowerShell, you have that particular incremental approach. So you will have to write down your own logic to go ahead and let's say create the app service plan, the app services, SQL servers, and all these things out. Also, you'll have to make sure that it is reusable. Even that is in infrastructure as a code only, but just a more, let's say, complicated procedure than using, let's say, something like ARM template. Again, if you want to use a PowerShell, instead of, let's say, doing an ARM, you can add a task, search for PowerShell, and use something called Azure PowerShell task out here, give you a PowerShell file, and that will take care of the creation out here as such. Again, the same thing, but in this case, you will have to, let's say, write your own logic end to end. Yes, any more questions here, guys?
So will we be
Okay.
deploying in many multiple resources at a time, sir? Like in this sense?
Will we be deploying multiple resources at a time? Yes, that's what I did here. I deployed multiple resources, which is a resource group, the web app, the access plan, the SQL Server, and the SQL database out here. So yes, we will be deploying multiple resources. So if you want to just segregate it, you can have individual templates for individual resource and deploy it out. So anyways, works fine.
Like so won't be if you copy index, so like there will be like multiple like same copies of the same resource. Then how do we
Mm-hmm.
inject that data into that particular like if same
Just a
resource?
second. So doing copy and you want multiple resources. So you're trying to deploy multiple resources using a copy index. So what's your point right
Yes,
now,
sir.
or what's your question right now?
And there will be like separate database, separate SQL database files for with me. Then I have to inject
Mm-hmm.
two or more
Mm-hmm.
database SQL files into different SQL database.
Mm-hmm.
Then how do we do this?
First, let's not complicate it. Let's go with the one straightforward infrastructure out here. And what you do is like give me a diagram of what you're exactly trying to achieve and why you're trying to, let's say, do that. Then I'll explain how do you do that.
Okay.
Agree? Yes, please go ahead. Give me a
Yes, sir.
diagram of
Sure.
what exactly you're trying to achieve, and I'll help you out with the same thing out there. Okay, guys, I'm almost 4 minutes above the hour. So we'll meet tomorrow. We'll discuss more on this one. Thank you, guys, and have a good day ahead. Thank you.